Brahmane Namaha. Now I am going to discuss the topic, the science of uncertainty, after the prayer. Let us start prayer. Saraswati Namastubhyam Varade Kamarupini Vidyarambam Karishyami Siddhir Bhavatu Me Sada. All scientific knowledge is uncertain, and uncertainty is a very important part of it. If you think you got something right, if you already made up your mind, you may not consider other options and will be unable to truly solve the problem. He goes on to say that if we are free of doubt and ignorance, we will not get any new ideas and make no progress. Others hold a similar point of view, supporting that uncertainty is one of the most important defining features of science. All interpretations and reports issued by radiologists contain a degree of uncertainty. Indeed, because medicine as a whole is an uncertain science, they must reflect it. Uncertainty in radiology reports has been studied. An investigation assessed the 18 most common expressions of probability in a series of imaging studies reports. The authors asked 11 individuals to rate their interpretation of expressions used by radiologists to define probability and uncertainty. Expressions with a high probability of consistency were absent, excludes, certain, and definite. On the basis of their results, the authors suggested expressions such as no evidence of and unable to exclude, or appears present and appears absent, rated low in consistency and should be avoided. This is important because these are some of the expressions most used when hedging and may lead to a misunderstanding of our reports. Radiologists must learn how to manage uncertainty and avoid as much as possible using terms that reflect it, to prevent it from spreading to our clinical colleagues and referring physicians. Because we radiologists face uncertainty in many studies. These investigators studied radiologists' reactions to uncertainty and practice factors associated with them. Terms used to describe these reactions included stress, uneasy, troubles me, anxious, and concern. 3 factors were directly linked to these reactions and included sex interpretation, volume, and years in practice. As expected, more experienced and older radiologists were less affected by uncertainty, and unexpectedly, women had less intense reactions toward it than men. Past involvement in medicological issues did not increase anxiety and uncertainty. Another important observation made by the authors is that radiologists experience more intense reactions than those reported in other medical specialties. If our ability to detect abnormalities is based mainly on experience, it is empiric by definition. Knowledge of theory and training should help lessen this empiric nature. Logical arguments about what we see in our images lead us to make inferences. Inferences can be of two types: deductive and inductive. A deductive reference or a deductive inference states that if the premise is true, the conclusion must also be true. This type of reasoning is commonly used in scientific prospective studies when the conclusions confirm or negate the validity of the initial hypothesis. This concept can be extended to the everyday practice of radiology. We make inferences about patients' diseases on the basis of imaging studies, and later we confirm or negate these on the basis of histology, laboratory results, and outcome. If the conclusions disapprove our initial observations, we have the tendency to go back, relax, or relook at the findings, and many times doubts their initial validity and significance. This is more common when the degree of initial and uncertainty was absence of ambiguity, and uncertainty makes confirmation of inferences unnecessary. Thus, when findings are pathognomonic, we are all no longer interpreting the studies but simply stating obvious observations. Making a diagnosis based on the antimony behavior is a type of deductive activity. Any argument that is not deductive tends to be inductive, that is, its conclusion cannot be established with certainty. Inductions make our lives easier and more livable, and are a critical part of human optimism. In radiology, induction is less commonly used than deduction. Those who study philosophy and logic cite a third mechanism that can help interpret out imaging studies: abduction. Abductions are essential in reaching a diagnosis and are simple guesses about what things are based on previous observations. To reach correct abductions, one must have the appropriate scientific background. Abductions also help us to organize new observations achieved by using the scientific method. The ultimate result of radiologic inferences is a report's conclusion. The conclusion is the actual interpretation of the observations listed in the findings section of the report. Data accumulated may be analyzed by using a frequentist paradigm. Once a hypothesis is proved it becomes a theory. In frequentism, scientific realism and determinism, a theory is accepted as true. If the conclusion in one report is accepted as true, knowing it when reassessing a study may affect the subsequent interpretation. Reassessing a study without knowledge of its prior results leads us to be able to directly compare dichotomous results from two independent readers, and should the results be similar, it produces a more valuable interpretation of the findings. Frequentism asks questions regarding the probability of observing the data. An opposing point of view was introduced by the Bayes. Contrary to determinism, the Bayesian paradigm states that just because a theory agrees with our observation, it cannot be assumed to be true. Although the mathematics of frequentism are relatively simple, Bayesian ones are very complex and could not be completely understood until we had computers capable of handling incredible amounts of data. The noxious quality of tobacco products and evidence of aspirin in the development of Reyes syndrome are typical examples of situations in which interested individuals have attacked the results of science to manipulate special interests. These interest groups generally use derogatory terms such as junk science to derail public health regulations. Junk science is characterized by spurious interference, something that does not happen when the scientific method is rigorously followed. Unfortunately, our government has tools in place that help introduce uncertainty in the public arena. The Data Quality Act allows anyone to ask for collected if he or she believes the data presented are not of sufficient quality, objectivity, utility, and integrity. Although at first this seems laudable and honest, it has been widely produced that this provision was inserted at the request of an individual who advocated industry funded regulatory reforms. As we must strive to limit the amount of uncertainty flowing into society, we must learn to use it on an individual basis to help us improve the practice of radiology. All science has uncertainty. Unless that uncertainty is communicated effectively, decision makers may put too much or too little faith in it. The information that needs to be communicated depends on the decisions that people face. Are they 1. Looking for a signal, 2. Choosing among fixed options, or 3. Learning to create classes of decisions in terms of how to characterize, access, and convey the uncertainties relevant to each. We then offer a protocol for summarizing the many possible sources of uncertainty in standard terms, designed to impose a minimal burden on scientists while gradually educating those whose decisions depend on their work. Its a goal are better decisions, better science, and better support for science. Now, scientific research. Scientific research can reduce both kinds of uncertainty. Research directed at clarifying facts can provide imperfect answers to questions such as how well an oil pipeline will be maintained and monitored, how long the recovery period will be after the bariatric surgery, and how much production bicycle helmets offered. Research directed at clarifying values can provide imperfect answers to questions such as which charitable contributions give donors the greatest satisfaction that happens when people commit to long term goals. How much pleasure people can expect from windfalls on how much pain from misfortunes. Taking full of advantages of scientific research requires knowing how much uncertainty surrounds it. Decision makers who place too much of confidence in a science can face unexpected problems, not realizing how wary of they should have been. Decisions makers who place too little confidence in science can miss opportunities while wasting time, resources gathering information about with no practical value. As a result, conveying uncertainty is essential to science communication. Much of scientists' own discourse is about uncertainty. Journals require authors to disclose the assumptions and ambiguities underlying their work. Scientific debates focus on uncertainties requiring attention. Peer review scrutinizes the uncertainty in individual studies, protecting science from an unwarranted faith in forward results. A healthy scientific community rewards members who raise problems before their critics and penalizes who overstate results. By revealing uncertainties, scientific discourse is an essential about them. However, it typically provides both more and less detailed and decision how can take it well. At one extreme, scientists' discourse can involve minutiae that overwhelm even experts. At the other, it can omit vital uncertainties that a field routinely ignores, either because they approach or they appear important or because its scientists have nothing to say about them. As a result, communicating with the simplest and complicating have both simplifying and complication honored scientific discovery. On the other hand, the uncertainties that scientists fail to mention must be uncovered. Which uncertainties to subtract and add depends on the decisions that the communications are meant to serve. Some decisions may be robust to any plausible uncertainty, others may be highly sensitive to details. Once communicators know what science is worth knowing, they can study what facts decisions makers know already and how much makers know already and how best to convey missing knowledge. As with all accommodation, though, the first task is determining what to say. That will depend on the decision, which might fall into the three broad categories. 1. Decisions about action threshold. 3. It is every aspect of options to be given the best. Decisions about potential options, what is possible. From this perspective, communications are effective when they help people identify choices that serve their own self-defined best interest. In contrast to such non-persuasive communications, persuasive messages are effective, convince people to behave in other way that someone else has chosen. With persuasive communication, sharing or communications, hiding uncertainty might be justified. With non-persuasive ones, honesty is the only policy. In the scientific process, absolute certainty, the uncertainty is a father of the process, and one does not mean that a result, hypothesis, or theory of wrong. Scientists have developed scientific uncertainties outside the scientific community. Terminology can be confusing. This may lead to incorrect conclusions about the validity of the science. Most people think of uncertainty as an absence of knowledge. However, as in sincere or in science, uncertainty is used as a measurement to tell us how well something is karma. Scientists almost always included the level of uncertainty in a discussion of scientific results. By quantifying how much uncertainty is associated with results, scientists are able to communicate their findings more peacefully. Scientific uncertainty generally means that there is a range of possible values within which the true value of the measurement lies. Further, research on a topic or a theory may reduce the level of uncertainty and the range of possible values. The public or the media interpret scientific uncertainties. This is synonymous with doubt. This can unfortunately discredit research findings, whereas reporting the level of uncertainty is struggling here. The research results and provide guidance for the founds of function the future research projects. Scientific uncertainty is a bedrock concept of science that makes the results stronger and more useful for. Uncertainty is in the scientific process in its seriousness, not several kinds of uncertainty. Statistical uncertainty, natural variability, and true uncertainability. Satisfied uncertainty involves a measured range of variability. An example of uncertainty is the advancy with which the spread are found in seawater can be determined. Any effort to measure sound speed has, for example, some measure of uncertainty in the distance over which the sound traveled, the temperature found, and salinity of the pressure and salinity of the water and the measurement of the travel time. Unlike statistical uncertainty described above, there is only one true value that exists within a state's statistically defined range of values. Biological systems have an uncertainty associated with the range of natural variability. For example, in mammals, the softest sound that an animal can hear at different frequencies will vary between individuals and in a very single individual. These levels may vary over time. The best hearing level at a frequency includes uncertainty because of this natural variability in hearing levels across individuals. Research on human hearing levels, providence, and having levels. True uncertainty is where there is a question or regarding the cause, result, or probability of an effect. A scientist understands that in any circumstances, someone else him and tell him to cool and prove them. Someone else may prove them wrong or refine what they have done. Depending on the scientific and depending on be in a range hand, there can be a loud of uncertainty. Bojaya ante Bojanam comes. Scientific uncertainty is especially difficult to consider in the scientific process when it affects the health, safety, and environment. The challenge arises as the potential risks are observed and scientists are able to determine an absolute cause and effects to mitigate or regulate environment. A challenge arises as potentials. If the scientists are unable to determine an absolute cause and effect to mitigate our regular environmental problems, policy makers and environmental regulations look to the scientific community or scientific community for absolutes and certainty. However, data from environmental studies related to health safety and the ecological consequences of human actions may not provide the level of scientific certainty that political makers and regarding regularities needed. In many cases, statistical probabilities are the best answers that scientists can provide. Those statistical probabilities, along with the actor in one formation, can be used to produced by powering means that reflects when making their decisions. Sri Kanta Kalyananidram Sri Venkatavasa Srimasamangala Sasmari Madacharya Purogami Sarvesha Purvairacharya Satkృతాయ Astu Mangalam.